Any other questions, please?
Just could you elaborate a little bit on the non-aggression? I'm not aware of that. Non-aggression.
The non-aggression principle. Let's see. I think it was Murray Rothbard that articulated it, but the principle has been around at least since our founding. And really, if you study the classic philosophers, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, they essentially say the same thing. So I think it was Murray Rothbard that gave a name to it and called it the non-aggression principle. He was an American economist and historian and political theorist. But if you want to know more, I would urge you to Google it. It's philosophical in nature, and as philosophy goes, it's really hard to kind of crunch it into a soundbite. But that's essentially what it is. You can't initiate force against me, but if you do, then I can use force against you to stop that aggression. So it's not a pacifist principle. A lot of people hear the name of it and they think, oh, that's pacifism. It's not. It recognizes that there is a proper use of force, and then there's an improper use of force. And of course, if you want to talk about delegating authority to your elected officials, you can't delegate to your elected officials which you yourself do not have. So if you can't initiate force against me, you can't elect Chuck Rain to initiate force against me. So that's
What gun laws are currently pending in the New Mexico legislature?
none. House Bill 77. House Bill 77, which was the one that you really heard about in the news, it failed. It was gutted beyond recognition, really. And in fact, I forgot to mention, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the mental health aspect is because House Bill 77 was really morphed into this bill that would allow New Mexico to submit mental health information to the NICS background system. There was another bill, House Bill 402, which was basically a carbon copy of Dianne Feinstein's bill, and that failed almost immediately. It was tabled, I think, because it was unconstitutional, but I can't remember. You can find all of that information on how votes went on the New Mexico legislature website. It's a little tricky to navigate, but it's there. And then the bill to nullify federal law, that was also tabled unconstitutionally. But to the best of my knowledge, those were really the three major gun control bills, and they all died.
This one is a good question. You failed to address where our rights come from. Can you please elaborate more on this?
Well, as a Christian, our rights come from God. Now, God has given you a free will. He's given you ownership of your body to a degree. Okay? So we aren't autonomous creatures. Okay? But we do have a right to exercise our will, and that's ultimately where self-ownership comes from. But even if you're not a Christian or a theist and believe that a deity gave you that, there are many non-theists who will acknowledge that because you have the right of use of your own body, and because you own it, you have that inherent right.
The Constitution of the state of New Mexico states all able-bodied males 18 to 55 are members of the militia of the state of New Mexico. Can you comment on that?
So basically what the militia was when it was started was it was a citizen military. It was just regular Joe Schmuck-bellies between those ages that were regularly trained with firearms. They had to buy their own firearms if they couldn't. The local governments actually bought those firearms, but you had to pay money back. So it wasn't just a welfare thing, you had to pay it back. But that was what the militia was. It was everybody, and everybody was armed. In fact, it's interesting that Harvard study that I mentioned, and I'm going to be putting this up on my website, they point out that in early American history, Americans were armed to the teeth. I mean, we were a tiny little country, and we had more firearms than any other country in the world. And they point out that there was no problem with gun crime or anything like that. Everybody was trained. That was the key point. So that's what the militia was.
Anyone else?
Not yet. I'm still reading around the gills for this speaking thing. I'm mostly a writer, but I have not been invited into one of the private schools. I find me. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I study theology and philosophy for the fun of it, so I don't do scrapbooking or things that normal mothers do. And I really started studying about, gosh, I guess it was in 2008 during the presidential election. It was the first election where I ever got to participate in the primary. And I was looking at all the Republican candidates and thinking, geez, there's a lot of candidates, how do I pick? And so I picked up a book called Good to be King by Michael Bednarik. It's a primer on the Constitution. It's very good. I highly recommend it, Good to be King by Michael Bednarik. It's a little difficult to buy these days unless you have an ounce of silver, but the Albuquerque Public Library has 4 copies on hand, so you can get them there. Bednarik, Badnarik. And his book's really short, easy to read. I got done with it in a week, and it just, man, that woke me up. And it was at that point that I really started getting into the philosophy of liberty and all that. So, yes. The website is relatively new, about a year old, I would say. I'm getting some new content up there right now. My website is not just about politics. I've got the name, actually the name is kind of a spin-off from C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, which talks about basic foundations of liberty. And on my website, I talk about politics and religion. And I do that because politics and religion are, the 2 topics that you never talk about, like society, right? They're the 2 topics, though, I found that you absolutely must talk about in a free society, because one deals with your personal liberty and the other deals with your spiritual liberty. And I find that the struggle for personal liberty is an allegory for the struggle of spiritual liberty. And so I can't keep those 2 mutually exclusive. Usually when I talk about politics, I have to talk about the spiritual aspect of it. So, yes.
How do you propose to promote the nullification of federal law in this state?
Education is key. I would love to talk to more people about it. You can also get a book by Thomas Woods, which is called Nullification, which expounds on the principles that I talked about today. But education is really the key, and you really start with your local government. So at Rio Rancho, I'm keeping, I'm working with other people to keep an eye on the city council and the county commission. And so you have to start locally. You have to start locally, because remember that the higher up, the further removed you get, and it's harder to make change. So you focus on your locality, and there's already people doing this. There's already cities across the nation who are hurting so bad from the economy that they've all actually made their own alternative currencies, which are completely legal, because they just use it within their own community. But they're really starting to think outside the box and nullifying a number of things just in their non-compliance of it. Yes?
Are you familiar with the Waste People Congress? Bob Schultz?
Vaguely. I've heard about it.
That's what we do. Local councils and the county commissioners and so forth.
Okay.
Because they kind of got through the back doors and on the news, and they through the back door, they asked me to be the state coordinator.
Wow.
That was the Orange County.
Okay.
Orange County. So
Okay.
I would encourage you to send me your website, put it up on.
I don't have a website, but
How you get the web?
Bob Schultz does. GiveMeLiberty.org.
Yeah.
GiveMeLiberty.org.
Give me liberty.
They did the 2009 Continental Congress in Illinois.
Oh,
Give me
okay.
liberty.com.
Yes, I'm
priority.